It felt like my soul had been someplace else for a really, really long time.
I entered into the eye of the storm of grief that I had been carrying. I began to cry.
The littlest thing would just send me into an anxiety spiral that, like, it's just one little thing. Why is this little thing ruining my day?
Eleusinia is a unique psilocybin retreat based in Mexico with a focus on meditation, neuroscience, and brain health.
I had zero doubt that this was something that I was going to go through and actually do.
That self-compassion sort of has trickled into every little part of my life.
I hadn't laughed that hard in so long.
The profoundness with which I experienced like reality, the magnitude of the beauty was just completely overwhelming.
John, it's so nice to see you again. Thank you so much for making time to come to the show. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and why you decided to come to Eleusinia?
Yes, thank you for having me, Tanya. I'm 47. I'm of Colombian descent, brought up in a very turbulent lifestyle with a lot of violent and toxic type of experiences with my mother and father. And I was reaching out to Eleusinia because I had a breakdown just before coming to Eleusinia where I saw myself becoming my mother, who was very abusive with me. And I did not want to become that with my kids, my family. Topped with personal relationship issues with my wife in a situation that has me very uncomfortable with an open relationship that I've encountered or have started to, with my wife, being more open and opening up our marriage. That challenge with abandonment issues, with controlling, misogynistic Latino behavior, machismo behavior, for example, was very unhealthy for me to be in that type of scenario. And I had flare-ups that have caused my relationship to be more difficult. So I needed to find something different because I don't want to become what I came from. So Eleusinia seemed to have offered something different, that something more spiritual and a way of finding myself to be more grounded, to be more open-minded, and to be more resilient, to find that inner strength that coming to Eleusinia I did not feel I had.
Were you particularly interested in psilocybin, and had you worked with it before, or how did that go?
No, you know what actually drew me, I've never really had a psilocybin experience that was ceremonial or with the intentionality that I experienced in Eleusinia. I did have a college experience in the recreational type of way at a concert, but not in the sense of how we learn to be more intentional with what we're doing and leaning into problems. This was more, that experience was very just different. And I Googled it. I Googled spiritual journey and I think I also put retreat in the search phrase, and Eleusinia drew me specifically when I saw the tribal component with Josefina, seeing that there is an indigenous component to the experience, and myself being part indigenous myself, I felt like there is a connection there and something that just drew me to finding and connecting more to that indigenous side of my DNA or my design and who I am.
And I remember you saying that was an important part of your experience meeting Josefina. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it felt like to arrive and how you were feeling, and then what it felt like to meet Josefina?
Yeah, so that was my intention. My want was to speak to her. She's a spiritual curandera. That first experience with her, her being this just beautiful ball of energy, of compassion, that I didn't say anything much to her outside of hello. And from there, she asked if she can do some chanting in the Mayan tongue and if it's okay for her to put her hand on me. And I agreed. And without words, it felt like we were communicating, we were talking. One of the things she whispered to me was that my heart is broken and that I have a lot of chaos in my thoughts. That immediately broke me down. I started crying, all the hurt, because I felt like she felt me. She understood me. She felt my heartache. I'm still working through that grief of having a broken heart, but she really touched me when she said that. And I felt like I could release. I wanted to heal, just wanted to find something different because what I've been doing beforehand and was not working.
So that was the day before your macrodose. So were you feeling prepared after she was a touchstone, like you had landed and kind of created some spiritual foundation for your experience the following day?
Yeah, so like I knew that when it finally would hit me, I had the intentions of sitting with her, and that was going to be my first stopping point. Outside of being concerned that it would not impact me because I was on antidepressants coming into Eleusinia that I had detoxed for about almost 2 weeks before arriving there. So I had a little bit of an apprehension or a concern that maybe the psilocybin wouldn't impact me. What if it didn't do what it was supposed to do? What if I don't feel anything and it's all a big waste for me? I was having these negative inner thoughts that it wasn't going to work. And I did need a booster to finally put my guard down and really lean in to my violence that I came from, the abuse that I came from. There was a molestation that happened in that time frame too, that I just needed to lean in and find strength. But first I needed to cry. I needed to hurt. And speaking to her was very symbolic because I found that first position, which was not too far from where she was sitting. And my energy, I was wanting her to come to me. And I knew that there had to be a wait for the time to be right. I just sat there and I stayed. I think within the first hour, I did not want to move. I just stayed there. And I shared my story with her and felt her pain also. In fact, she started tearing up and crying during that conversation. We both had similar stories, her on her father's side and me on my mother's side. And that felt like a relief, like someone seeing me, someone understanding me. And it really had me think about, okay, I need to break away from this bravado of having strength and just being vulnerable. And I did not want to move after speaking with her. It kind of felt like the metaphor for my life because I was just stagnated. I was in this one position that I did not want to move from. I'm not going to evolve. I'm not going to adapt. I'm not going to change. I'm going to stay in this stink of negative hurt and anger and just being unable to let go. So I stayed there at first in the first hour, and then I went dark. I started thinking about suicidal thoughts in the sense that I didn't want to hurt anymore. I didn't want to feel this pain anymore. And why me? Why do I have to have all this pain? Why do I have to have all this change that I'm not adapting? I don't agree with. And it was difficult. I went that bridge. There's a new location. There's an open field. Before you get to the open field, there's a little bridge you have to cross. To me, it symbolized me going to the other side or where I was dark at that point. So I was almost looking for a place to turn off my light per se, right? Like I was like that wounded warrior that wanted to find a place by himself where he can just go off into the sunset and be quiet again. So from that experience, it was awesome too. You came around, Tanya. You came to my side and let me know that I was lucky. I was sitting down and you told me, look around you, Juan, you're so lucky. And I'm like, I don't feel lucky. I don't feel like I'm lucky. Like, look around, you're sitting around a whole bunch of 4-leaf clovers. I'm like, wow, like there was a sense of like happiness in that sense. And like I was coming around and I mentioned to you in one of our integration meetings that I felt like I was shedding the armor that was keeping myself in this state of just hurt because I used that hurt to survive. And seeing the beauty in that open field, the wildflowers, the trees that were soothing me, they were breathing with me. And I recall looking at the grass, touch me, soothe me, stroke me. And when I would look down, the grass was waving, like wavy, but it was waving, touching my skin, touching my feet, touching my arms. When I put my hands into it, it felt like I was connected with nature. I felt like there was love that I was looking for, but love in the earth, love in the way that I'd never really felt before with nature. It brought this compassion out in me.
It sounds like it was a lot of work for you to go through a process of sitting in the pain, knowing that you had to grieve, letting that out, having that emotional release, then experiencing the dark thoughts. And then you were like mindfully taking the armor off. And it just seems like you did a lot of work there. When I came on, you were starting to let more softness in. And so everything kind of changed. And so then what happened after that? What was happening to you at that point when the softness came?
I remember feeling other people's hurt, being aware of other people's pain and having that sensibility of they're hurting too. And then how can I help? How can I be compassionate? And I recall seeing you two having the same type of like attention, awareness. I recall saying something to the effect, it looks like you're nourishing, you're looking around to nourish, to help. And I was aware, I was very...
empathic. So you dropped into an empathic self.
I did. I was feeling like just wanting to help people more than sitting in my own hurt. It was slowly coming out. Like I still had a little tension because I walked up to that chapel and there's a concrete slab right next to the chapel that I was like wanting to go in that area. And I recall calling Emilio because there I asked to speak to Emilio to have more of a man-to-man brotherhood conversation about my personal situation with my wife and how I'm hurting in this openness that we have brought into our marriage. And having that conversation with him and him having an understanding of it and giving me also like support and letting me know that things can be better by just taking it one step at a time. I may not agree with what's going on around me, but I can control my emotions and that become that emotion that I felt, the jealousy, the anger, the sense of wanting to keep everything the same, which can be difficult when you're with a free spirit type of partner that wants to have freedom. And I am the shackle per se, the ball and chain that does not want to allow that freedom because of my abandonment issues, because of my codependency, because of my need to always have things in control. And I can't control another human. I can only control myself. And coming to that understanding, Maddie came also, and she was very compassionate, sharing her story with me. She took off her shoes and got grounded with me in the grass, and her spirit was very uplifting also. Her story of being dead for a minute and leaving her old self in that death and being risen, rebirth per se, into someone different that has the gratitude and appreciation for life. That also was touching.
Beautiful. And John, I remember you telling me, and it impacted me a lot because I wonder if anybody can relate. I meet people and they say, man, you must be a Zen master, or you're just so peaceful. And I just can't believe people get this sense of who I am when really I'm having so much suffering. And so can you talk a little bit about that and how you came to know yourself in a different way?
Yeah, there are times where I would meet people and there is that sense of you're really calm. You're really like, I don't ever see you flare up and be like angry. It was very difficult because there are some times where I can't bottle that feeling. I'm very chaotic inside and my thoughts are going all over the place. And I think I told you also that it's like I'm the clown that has the happy face painted on his face and I'm the life of the party, or I'm very friendly, but that makeup is wearing out and the tears have made that makeup disappear and I'm not that happy person. As of recently, up to coming to Eleusinia, it had become very difficult to paint that face, to have that cover up. And that's what I mean. I had that massive breakdown with my family and being very what I don't want to be, what I came from with my mother's abuse, and very aggressive, very sharp, very loud, getting into the argument with my partner, the kids seeing me and my partner, my wife, being in this argument. And it brought me back to the space and time of like, this is what I don't want to be. And my fear is that I'm becoming my mother. So that armor that I showed of being the hard bravado and the softness that I was told that, yeah, you're very calm, you're very like a surfer dude. Like, man, if you only knew what's inside my brain, what's inside my heart and soul, sometimes I'm covering up the hurt through laughter.
And I'm so glad that you shared that because I feel like a lot of people walk through life that way. On the outside, people read them so differently. And we need to remember that there's so much more that goes on in the life and the landscape of a human being and that you're not alone. And I think there's a lot of people out there listening that are like, yep, a lot of people read me that way, but I have a lot of stuff going on. But I know as you moved through all those experiences, the grief or the letting go, that you did start to see yourself as more of a person that wants to give compassion to the world.
It is true. And what it is and And how I'm going to pursue that, I don't know yet, but I know I need to find something that allows me to help people. I train in boxing, so I do train young kids, young adults, and adults in boxing. So there is a little bit of compassion there and help that I'm doing, helping the younger kids find their strength through the art of boxing. Seeing a person come into the gym who's either had some trauma in their life and they've been very timid, from being that timid person that barely wants to hit a bag, a heavy bag, or do mitt work with me, to 3 months later, they're having this strength and being able to hit a bag harder, being able to be put in a combat situation inside the ring and have that tenacity to fight versus flight. And just seeing that development brings me warmth inside too. Because not only are we learning how to fight inside the ring, we're also learning how to live in life, because life can be like a boxing match. It will knock you down. You will get knocked down in life, but you got to rise. You got to get up. Being a failure or making a mistake, it's not about that. It's about being able to be strong enough and resilient enough to say, I had that failure, but it doesn't stop me. I still keep moving forward. I still rise. I still am resilient like a champion would be.
Wow, that's beautiful. Resilient like a champion would be. So did you start to feel resilient like a champion emotionally after your experiences? I know you were feeling really good, but then you had to come home and face like the dynamic real life of the stuff going on.
I felt more at peace with myself, calmer, softer, in the sense that I don't have to be so sharp and reactive. So in being that way, even though my situation is the same, I don't have to be reactive. I don't have to be rough or be angry all the time. I can be calm. Even though things are chaotic around me or they may not be exactly what I want them to be, I'm okay. And that's another thing, coming out feeling like I don't have to have everything perfect. Sometimes just being okay, it's okay. I came back feeling more grounded, connected to earth for sure, to nature, and compassion to my fellow brothers and sisters, but also being just at peace, regardless of what I can't control another person, which was the misogynistic machismo that I felt I can do. I can release that. And that anger from that abuse, which I used to survive throughout my 47 years of life, I don't need that anger anymore. Because there was one moment in time when the macro session, I guess the psilocybin makes you use the restroom a lot, right? I drank a lot of liquids and I needed to use the restroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was still having a wave and felt like I could release that little kid. I looked at him and I said, you don't need to fight anymore. You don't need to hurt anymore. Let that go. And letting that go, I felt strong. I didn't feel vulnerable anymore. I felt that experience just made me a bit stronger. And one of my integration conversations with Eleusinia, she mentioned to me that I did need that little kid to survive. I did use that kid for hurting people, but I don't need that kid anymore because I want to live. And by releasing him, saying thank you to that little kid, I don't need you anymore. I want to live, put me in a more peaceful state because I don't have to be per se the warrior to seek blood. I can be the warrior to seek love, justice. I can fight for those reasons versus fighting to hurt because I'm hurt. Releasing that anger, right? It's just really saying to myself that I just don't have to fight. I can come from a place of care and compassion and support. And there's the answer. I knew that the answer is not in this anger that I have. The answer is in love and support. With my personal situation with my wife, that's where I've come to an agreement with that. I don't have to be resentful. I don't have to seek revenge because that was how I operated beforehand. And with having this softer touch, this softer compassion in me, I can hold a space to be supportive unconditionally to my partner in life who is in a transitional state. They're in change too. They have hurt. She has hurt. She has things she's dealing with. That I can be there by her unconditionally as a support and compassionate partner versus the angry and you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that partner. So finding that answer in the compassion that I see with nature and the compassion that I'm seeing and helping others gave me that answer in my personal relationship.
So you spoke of having an upbringing of abuse and abandonment. And so it sounds like it really helped on those as well, because you were less fearful to give more space to your spouse and Do you feel like that's true? Did you process some of that particular abandonment experience?
Yeah, and one of the integration conversations with Josefina, she told me about my mom's last few breaths. And in that conversation, her last few breaths had a lot of hurt and a lot of remorse and a lot of regret. And with my story, the way my mother and I parted ways was very violent because this was a moment where she beat me so bad, she choked me out and I passed out. And my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, this is when I was 7, he had just learned how to call 911. He called 911 after I got choked out, and my mom was charged with child abuse. So shortly after that, my father and mother decided to part ways. She went back to Colombia, and I stayed in Miami where my father bottled up all that violence and hurt. And we didn't speak anymore about the incident. Even to this day, we don't really talk about that incident. We know it happened, but getting past that, getting to a space of compassion with my mother too, that has given me a freedom per se where, yeah, the abandonment issues are there, but it can come from a place of caring for myself or giving myself compassion, self-compassion, and giving myself grace that it wasn't my fault. It was nothing that I can do about that. I was the victim there, but I don't have to stay that way. And Josefina telling me how much hurt she had, I recall telling her, like, what do I do with that? What do I do with this information you just gave me? Outside of the crying that I began crying again. Started crying because what am I going to do with this information? How do I process that? And that's where she told me, like, let that young kid go. You don't need that little boy anymore because you're trying to live and you have to let it go. The two things we need in life, she said, is abundance of love and peace. That was profound for me. And I cried in her shoulders and she gave me that space to cry. So am I healed completely from abandonment issues? Maybe not, but I feel more resilient in recognizing them and being able to have that new neuron pathway that was created with psilocybin to allow me to recognize it. I see you there, and in a way kind of push you away with the practices of breathing, meditating, and being more mindful of my negative inner talk.
When I saw that you had made your Mighty Network profile picture, the picture of you and Josefina, I sent it to her and she was so happy. So it was just, I was like, look at this. John made his picture with you.
Yeah, she's like my tribal sister. I just enjoyed her energy. It was very like getting back in tune with my home, that being my indigenous side of my family. And you too, Tanya, you are very, very caring, very compassionate. I enjoyed spending the time we spent.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. So how was your DMT experience? Did it relate to those experiences?
So, often the conversation on DMT is that it's a 100-meter sprint. You're going to go where you're going to go and you're going to see what you need to see, right? That first experience was guided, right? Because it was Jessica was there, another warrior to my right. Josefina being the tribal spiritual hikura, holding my hand. Both of them were holding my hand, and there was tribal music playing. I remember taking about 10 to 15 puffs, and from there, all the geometrical, vivid colors started appearing. And there was we were under a tree. There was a massive tree in front of us where we were in the open field, and it felt like the tree turned into Guadalupe. And I drew that picture of Guadalupe in my journaling, and I showed it to Josefina. She was like, that's the pre-Hispanic mother of Earth. I'm like, wow, there's something maternal showed up to me. And then let me backtrack, because before I took it, I looked up to the sky and said, antepasados, speak to me. Antepasados, ancestors, speak to me. And that presence of Guadalupe turning the tree into the figure of Guadalupe and the faces of death, like Dia de Muerte, Dia de la Muerte. I saw these gray circles of death circling, and not in a threatening or a scary way. It was more like a presence. And that tribal music that was playing had my heart pumping. And I felt like I was getting ready for battle. It was like rise. It was rise. Like I felt like I needed to bounce with that music. And I had a little bit of a smile. The sun came out too. It was gray. It was a little bit cloudy and the sun came out and the wind started blowing and it felt like nature was just responding to me in that other dimension I was currently in. But it felt euphoric afterwards. It didn't feel, even though I saw faces of death, it didn't seem threatening to me. It just felt like a presence in that first D&T experience. The second one was awesome too because we were able to do it by ourselves with no one holding our hands per se, right? The same intentionality that I came in with speaking to the antepasados, the ancestors, I asked them to show me something, like come to me. That second experience is almost like I went into a graphical animation of another dimension in Earth. Everything became just so vivid in colors, the geometrical symbols from like squares to circles, everything started revolving like this really colorful looking artwork from Mexico, right? Like it was this beautiful color, right? And there was a warrior that came and just sat down next to me. This dude just saying, he was tatted up. And like, I remember taking off my shirt too. And like, I'm there showing my tattoos too. Like I'm there with this Indian dude who was just sitting there next to me. And I put my hands up to the sky and the wind started blowing. The trees started swaying. I'm like, wow. Like I felt I was controlling, like I was one with earth and one with the wind. That was amazing. It was another euphoric type of feel. But I came out with brotherhood too, because one of the other participants was to my left and he was having an experience. And I recall thinking, let me make sure he's okay because I want to make sure he's all right. And I got some water for him. I went and poured some water in a cup and was like, here, get some water. But I came out feeling like, listen to the nature, listen to what was happening around me because we are stronger than we think. That was the feeling that I came out in that second experience, that seeing this warrior show his presence next to me made me feel like I'm strong, like I'm stronger than I think I am.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a beautiful experience. Both of your experiences are really beautiful. So is there anything that you forgot to mention that you wanted to go into?
No, like I just really appreciate what you and the rest of the staff from Tyler, Emilio, Jessica, Jay, all of you guys, that what you are offering is truly something that you're helping change lives. You're helping people come out of whatever sadness they have or hurt. That's a beautiful thing you're doing because a lot of times, at least for me, I was trying everything up to that point, from being an antidepressant, trying therapy and medication that didn't seem to give me that feeling that I have, that lightness that I have now. And I really do appreciate that experience with that location. Is also amazing to be at. You really do see the beauty of nature. I'm appreciative and have gratitude that I was able to have the ability to go there. And maybe not everyone can do something like that, but the feeling gracious that I was able to have the ability to go in the financial, because not everyone can experience that in that setting, but just having this gratitude for what I was able to get out of that experience.
And I know that you're looking to tie the practice into your life. So you've kind of been figuring out how that's going to go. And so you're hoping to have a regular, mindful, compassionate practice with the medicine.
Yes, I want to continue in practicing the breath work. Maybe I'll move into yoga. Maybe that'll be something that I can do, meditating. And the cacao ceremony was also very warm. That's another thing. That was symbolic too, because during the cacao ceremony, we grabbed some herbs and spices in the box that we had. For me, I had the intentions of like just releasing all the hurt and watching it burn away in the fire. And the cacao was warm, very warm spiritually. And the song that was being chanted by you guys with Josefina, that song was so beautiful about healing and the medicine healing you. And that felt like a connection to my indigenous part. I really enjoyed that little cute song that you guys sang during that ceremony.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show, John, and sharing all that. And I send you so much love and strength. And I'm so proud of you for remembering how strong you are and laying down all that armor and just being really you. So keep going and stay in touch. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening. You can find all the information that you need to learn everything about this retreat on EleusiniaRetreat.com. We are a retreat that offers ongoing integration support, breathwork classes, and cultivation support after you have attended this retreat. It's an amazing experience that's one of its kind. If you're looking for a science-based retreat, something out of the box, something to change your life, something to add to your practice, this is where you really need to start. EleusiniaRetreat.com.